I do remember it. When I worked on The Oath, I worked with Richard Hatch, who was the original Starbuck. And so I was aware of Dirk Benedict, Richard Hatch, but part of me conflates it with Space 1999. So I don't remember watching specific episodes of Battlestar back then, but I was aware of it.
Yeah. And when we talk about maybe the most two popular sci-fi shows to ever come out of Canada and Vancouver, we talk about Stargate, the whole Stargate SG-1, Stargate Atlantis, and the whole Empire, which is Stargate. And the other one then is Battlestar Galactica, in terms of the legacy, in terms of what is left, in terms of the sci-fi industry. And to be associated with Battlestar, as you mentioned, during Canada, Vancouver, present, was it the big one in terms of those involved in the acting industry around Vancouver to get on one of those two shows?
Yeah, they were both coveted shows to be on. Battlestar, especially. I think after the first season, they won the Peabody. And so that really elevated things in terms of the community here. You wanted to be a part of something like that. At that time, television was quite a different landscape because, as you know, this aired initially on Sci-Fi, which is an American channel, and we didn't get it here in Canada. You needed to subscribe, or in the way that you got HBO back in the day. And so although it was a sought after show, it was a show that we didn't see unless we really went out of our way, unless we paid a subscription to see it. So, but yeah, to answer your question, Jim, no, it was definitely when I was cast, I felt like Battlestar was a get. Like people definitely looked at you and said, "Oh, you're going to do an episode of Battlestar. You're very fortunate," and it felt that way.
And tell me, how did the opportunity come arise to get cast in Battlestar? Was the initial role a day player role, which evolutionized after time to be a recurring character?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jim. When I first met Michael Reimer and Corinne Mayers and Heike for Corinne and Heike were the casting directors on the show. I'm sure you've heard about them from other actors. And they're fabulous casting directors in town who have been working in the industry for 30 years, and really they know the talent pool of the community very, very well. They have deep roots. They brought me in, and I don't remember how the role was specified. I mean, it was just if they were asking you to go in for Battlestar, you went in regardless. It was that kind of show at the time. And so Michael Reimer, who was he directed the pilot. I don't know if they would have called him the showrunner then. I don't know that. I didn't really hear that term bandied around at the time, but I suppose he was as close to a showrunner as we had on the floor. I did anyway in my limited involvement in the show. But I went in and met Michael, and I remember it being a really, really long audition process. He was very, very specific about what he wanted. And normally you'll go in and cut me off if I'm boring you, or if you know this information. But normally when you go in, you'll have the script, you'll have the sides, you'll read the scene, and they'll maybe make one adjustment. They'll ask you to do it again, maybe once, you'll do it again, and that'll be it. But with Battlestar, I was in that room for, I would say, 30 or 40 minutes. And Michael really, really wanted to massage the scene. He wanted to try it from all different angles. And it was just a really good time. And I remember genuinely walking away from the experience feeling like, even if I don't get it, I met a great director today. And I got to do my thing. I got to act and have a good time. It was a really enjoyable room, and he's just an exceptional director.
And tell me, what was it like walking on the first day of set in terms of shooting Battlestar? You're not a novice actor, or you're not a rookie, you're an accomplished actor. You've worked with big stars before. But working with Eddie Olmos, a guy who had producing credits, a guy who had his fingers dipped in every aspect of the show in terms of the scenes, the script. We interviewed Eddie in terms of this, and he told us in terms of the scenes, the script, the locations, every little details of the ships to look them old and rigidity. Eddie had his hands involved in everything. He was the godfather of the sort of show. And what was it like, the first interactions with Eddie Olmos? Did he welcome you when you arrived on set the first day?
Yeah, Edward was extremely warm. Like, he was a real captain of the show. I didn't spend a lot of time with him. I I was introduced to him on my first day, and he was just very warm and welcoming. And I had another friend of mine who was working on the show at the time was Michael Hogan. I don't know if you've spoken to Michael, but I come from the theater too, and so I do a lot of theater, and I've done a lot of theater with Michael Hogan. And when I got the job, I reached out to him, and he just sang Eddie's praises. Like, they were really tight, and he said, you're gonna have the best time, and Eddie's just the greatest champion of the show, and a great ambassador. And he was all those things. He was extremely warm, really welcoming, very friendly. And I was only sorry that I didn't have more to do with him. I had a passing interaction with him in one of the scenes, but he was a real champ. Yeah.
Yeah. And Vincent, one of the interesting dynamics of Battlestar Galactica, you mentioned there Paul Hogan, we had Mary McDonnell as well, Eddie Olmos. They were the sort of veteran, Richard Hatch, they were the sort of veteran cast of Battlestar Galactica. And then we had a big gap, dare I say, to the young bucks, the new kids on the block, in terms of Jamie Bamber, Katie Sackhoff, Grace Park, Tamo Pennicott, who were just, dare I say, making their way in the industry. This was their first big gig. This was their first big sort of breakout show for an awful lot of them that put them on the map. Did you notice that sort of divide, and where did you start to fit in? Did you almost fit in the middle, dare I say, coming into that terms of the show? And did you notice a gap between the ages in terms of shooting on set, or did it almost feel like a family dynamic?
You know, too, it really did feel like a family dynamic. It didn't seem hierarchical at all. I remember Mary, I had a brief encounter with her. She was extremely warm, and welcoming too. And, and just an incredible actor. I mean, like, that's the other thing, when you realize that you've got the opportunity to go up and go toe to toe with these people like Mary McDonnell and Edward Olmos. It's pretty exciting. And Battlestar gave. I was involved in some theater productions when the original call went out for the show. And normally a big show like that will come into town, and there'll be the odd actors cast in it, but really the meat of the show, they bring those actors up from Los Angeles or from New York or from London, by and large. But Battlestar was one of the first shows that I remember, as a young actor, realizing they're casting from the community. Like, you have as good a shot as anyone else, maybe even better, of being involved in this show. And I don't know where that came from. I imagine it was a very expensive show to produce at the time, and so they were more willing to take a risk, and try to save some money here and there. And maybe, I'm saying that, I'm speculating. But normally how it goes on big shows is they have all the money in the world, and they can have whoever they want come in to play these parts. But when I realized after the first season was cast, and I started hearing about people that I knew who had got really large roles, AJ Giuliani being one of them, Aaron Douglas, Tamo, Grace Park, there were all these actors who I either knew or was aware of their work, their up and coming work. And when you saw that they started to get these big roles on this big show, it really it kind of changed the game when you went into those rooms, because you really felt, normally you go into a room and you don't feel like you can get the job. You feel like you're going to buy your lottery ticket and you're going to throw your stuff out there. but you have a good sense that this is going to bigger fish. So this was a show where it really stayed at home, and you felt like you could really succeed.